let's move on here to one of his teammates and a guy who came into this class with quite a bit of hype. I feel like he was a top 10 guy entering the class, and that's Ben Saraf, I believe is how it's said. Saraf listed 6'5", 206. He's an April 14th, 2006 birthday, so he's 19 years old right now, but his rookie season will still be his age 19 season. So he's about 7 or so months younger. They're 8 months younger than Essengue. But if he were in the U.S., we would say he is on the age track. This is the age you're expected to be, after finishing your first year of college and entering the NBA. So Saraf was probably even more highly touted coming into the year for Essengue. Had a really good FIBA tournament for Israel. This year at Ulm, he averaged 12.2 points per game, 2.6 rebounds per game, 4.2 assists per game, 1.2 steals per game, and 0.3 blocks per game on 45.1, 30.1, 73.3 shooting splits. This year for Ulm, he played in 48 games. While he started the majority of those, he's still only playing about 23 minutes. Very few of their players, and this goes throughout a lot of the German league, play more than around 23 minutes, but that is worth noting. He something to note, the rebound number is definitely a bit of a worry. Turned the ball over 2.6 times, so in terms of assist to turnover, he has basically a 2-to-1, give or take. 52.7 true shooting across these 48 games. That's a pretty big worry. And he had a 32.2 assist rate to an 18.5 turnover rate. Those are good numbers. 2.7 steal rate. So another guy who got a lot of steals, only a 1.2 block rate, which is not awful for how small he is. 27.7 usage, and 105.4 offensive rating to a 108.3 defensive rating. Notably, a much worse offensive rating than Essengue. So the place to start with Saraf is pretty obvious. There's one cell here. This is a bigger point guard who can really pass the rock. Stone, how did you feel about Saraf's passing?
I thought it was good, not great. I feel like he's and I feel like he's a really good passer. I think he is able to make a lot of different passes. He can make skip passes. Either hand. He can just see the floor in its totality well. I wouldn't say he's a super quick processor, but he sees things in its totality, if that makes sense. He's not someone that's probably making the 0.0001 decision, but he's able to see as the ball moves around and as players move around, what things open up. He is so left hand dominant that it really takes away, I think, a lot of the juice for him, where he only dribbles with his left. He can pass with either hand, but he pretty much typically chooses to only pass with his left. And I think that, generally speaking, that's not something that concerns me as much. But when it's to this degree, to this level, it feels like only half the court is being able to be used because he's so left hand dominant. I think he has good touch as a passer. I think the accuracy is pretty good for the most part. Not great, not elite, but I would say good. I think, generally speaking, to access a lot of passes, he needs a screen to be able to get downhill. I think he uses his shin angles well and we'll get more into the offense broadly, but to get to a certain level, to get to the mid-range, he can use his shin angles well to open things up, but to get all the way towards the rim and all the way downhill, he really needs a screen because he doesn't have the level of explosion that I think a lead initiator ought to. And I think that there's enough there as a passer to really intrigue you and grab you, but there's enough drawbacks to it to really prevent at least me from seeing him as a future as a lead initiator because of those other things that I mentioned.
Yeah, and there's just like nothing else to like really sell you on offense. It's really worrying. I mean, the efficiency, you went over it, but 52% true shooting at, as a guy who's not short. I mean, 6'5" is sells an oversized guard. If your whole thing is going to be playmaking, if that's going to be your whole bit as a point guard, um, you have to really sell it. You have to either be a backup point guard who can come in and make a bunch of easy passes and just not turn the ball over, which he can't do because he turns the ball over at a pretty high rate. Or you have to just like actually create value. And that's so hard to do if you're not going to score the ball or you're not going to do anything else on offense. And he's just not really going to do any of that stuff. So the sell is just really, really hard.
Yeah, and I do want to just add to that real quickly. Sorry, Bryce, but I think he really struggles in the German league. That is not. We talked about like the talent level, and it's physical. It's not overly athletic. It's not a super athletic league by any means, and that's I think another reason maybe why Essengue popped so much. But it's not a very athletic league, and when Saraf was against anyone that was not like a 6 foot unathletic German guard, he probably enjoys quite a bit of beer as I do. Uh, he was really struggling against players that were just not these short unathletic guys, and that's pretty worrisome in a German league that is far less athletic than the NBA. And if you're a lead initiator and having that much difficulty when the biggest sell is your passing and you can't access those passes against anyone beyond unathletic short guards, that is not disqualifying necessarily because of other things we'll talk about, but it certainly is an immediate like red flag.
Yeah, and there's just too many red flags as like a primary initiator bet. And that's kind of a big worry. If there's red flags with the passing, with the scoring, I don't think he's like a super high level processor to where you're like, I just don't think that like the passing is high value or high leverage enough to where you can really sit there and be like, okay, but this is like the sell. That he's going to create a bunch of easy looks for these other guys, and the turnovers. He turns the ball over on pretty basic stuff, pretty stupid stuff. Every single kind of pass. It's not like it's like a Yakichonis where it's just like stuff you can really look at and be like, oh, we can clean this up. There's 2 or 3 things that if we really clean up, the turnovers go way down. So it's really hard for me to. I'm very picky about my primary initiator bets, and I think that's Saraf's only sell, and I'm going to be really picky about him here.
Yeah, that's all fair. I think I'm probably a little higher on the playmaking. I will say in some senses, I think he passes like a classic Euro guard. Like he kind of reminds me of like Nando De Colo, or he doesn't quite have the creativity of Teodosic, but like guys of that ilk. Especially Europe loves their Vasilije Micic, even though he doesn't have the crazy handlecraft of Micic at his best, but like he does have that same type of like willing to just kind of try things. Very, the best ones are very, very fun. He'll throw some like between 2 guys, like bounce passes that start off like going towards the corner and then bounce and backspin towards the roll guy or whatever. Like there's some fun stuff in there, but he's also at his best when he's just standing at the top and there's other action going on. Like I think he's more of a great decision maker than he is a high level processor. He's proactive as a passer in the sense that there are passes he wants to get to, and he is pretty good at manipulating the deep. There's a couple like, now I don't usually like jump passes, but I do think he's a little closer to the Tyrese Halliburton good jump pass, where he's getting in the air and he's looking someone off before, dumping something down. And, he's still able to make that read, right? Like if he looks like he's trying to look someone off and they don't go, he'll still throw that pass to the corner. That stuff is good. the biggest issue is he's just pretty bagless. You can't really create in tight spaces. He can't really create. He part of the reason he was a horrible off the dribble jump shooter this year is because he can't create space for him. His only method of getting downhill outside of a good screen that they're chasing over is like if a team is hedging or whatever, a little stop and then a hard, very loopy crossover that can be effective, but also good defenders are able to poke that somewhat consistently. He doesn't. I don't think he reads the defense very well in general. Like as a driver, I think he's really good at reading the defense in terms of how they are reacting to screens and how they are reacting to cuts. He's not good at reading the defense in terms of how they are reacting to his movement with the ball in general. I think that's part of why his finishing was pretty bad. So yeah, I mean, I think the passing is good, legitimately really good. There is a world that if he was a really good shooter, he could be like a really fun like offensive two guard maybe, where instead of being a primary initiator, he's always attacking second side stuff. But we'll talk about this. The shooting was not great. He was in the 35th percentile overall, 41.3% effective field goal rate. Now, to be fair, he only took 60 catch and shoot shots, and on those, he was in the 79th percentile, 59.2 effective field goal rate, including 65% effective field goal rate on unguarded catch and shoot shots. That's definitely good. But if you go back and watch all those, which I did, a good chunk of those are pretty wide open corner threes. And it's good that he can make those. And the jumper form has definitely improved since FIBA. He gets farther off the ground now. There's a little bit more consistency in his footwork, but he still has this weird thing where his base is angled way like with his shooting hand way forward and his shooting foot facing way forward, and he gets quite a bit of sway in his hips, and then he caps the ball and kind of backspins the ball with his right hand, which is pretty common for lefty jump shooters for whatever reason. But it's a two motion jump shot that he doesn't get a ton of rise off the ground. And the misses are pretty inconsistent, which I don't always care about. In fact, I would say I don't usually care about, but it does. I do think it's indicative here of there's just not a ton of feel for shooting. He's never had to do it. He's always been able to get away with just being like a good ball handler in the European sense, where like in transition and semi-transition, he can just kind of go in a straight line well enough with the ball and then hit like one behind the back wrap dribble and still get where he wants to go. And he was smart enough at lower levels to just fully manipulate a defense, like standing still with a live dribble. I think we've seen at Ulm that just doesn't work the same way. And Saraf is a guy I really wanted to like coming into. This is going to end up being really quick, a little scout here, I think. But I really wanted to like Saraf offensively. I did, but I just think there's too many big, obvious, gigantic holes. I mean, the truth is, it's really tough to be an NBA prospect if you're below 50%, you're below the 50th percentile as an at-rim finisher in Germany. Like that's pretty tough. He only dunked 11 times in how many games was it? 48 games. Now, for what it's worth, he did, 2 made dunks and 1 missed dunk were self-created half-court attempts, and then 1 other dunk was another half-court attempt. But offensively, I think the actual role is not lead initiator. It would be kind of in the Leandro Barmolo, ideal world of he's a really good, passing two who can make plays for others and keep the ball moving, be a real connector. And I do think there are flashes of it. Like he doesn't always need to dribble or hold the ball for like 10 seconds to make good passes. He just isn't, like, his brain right now isn't yet wired to just make good decisions quickly. But I think he flashes that. I think that's in there. So I would say if he can get to a point where he can be a good enough shooter, I think there's a real path to being a good offensive player. But that's really it, I would say. Coop, am I missing something here? Is there another way for him to be a good offensive player, or are there problems I didn't discuss here?
I mean, he's kind of simple. So, I mean, the shot is the very easy one, but I don't think he's like super aggressive in a way that you want like a super high level ball handler to be. Not that he's like settling. He's kind of just in the middle. I think he has a lot of. It's kind of similar to, we talked about with the Songe, where it's just like there's stuff here, and it's obvious stuff, but it's not special, right? If the shot can come around, maybe the rest of it'll come around. Like maybe the passing is far more leveraged, but I don't. With how bad the shooting is, it has to get to high level off the dribble shot creation, which we're just not seeing. If he's like a secondary side guy, maybe it's just some catch and shoot stuff. But I don't think he's the kind of guy. You need to add value in so many other ways that, like, I don't think the motor is particularly good. I don't think he's a great cutter. I don't think he's out there creating more opportunities with offensive rebounding or grabbing a ton of boards. Maybe he's a little bigger and the size adds some value, but there's not any amount of just surrounding talent to where he's or surrounding skills where he's like consistently adding value on a game by game basis. And that's not something that you can just start like you just don't see guys start doing the little things. You don't see them, start to back cut the second they touch an NBA floor and start to become a high level finisher and, add a floater and add a mid-range counter. And sure, if I don't know, it's such a far leap, like a logical leap that, and, shooting it as much as it's a developable thing, takes time. It takes time for that to come. And I don't think he's going to get that kind of development time in the NBA. Maybe in 6 years when he's back in the Euro League and the shot has come around and he's added more to his game. He becomes a cool prospect. He gets the Jayshawn Tate come back over, dude. We need somebody who could be a high level point guard at your size. But I genuinely I feel bad, but I just don't see the value in drafting him at the moment. Because there's so many guys who have flailed out like this, who are just so much better at the things he does. And he's young, I guess, but I don't know. I told you guys I'd be mean today, so I'm holding myself to it.
This is the most passive mean I've seen.
Yeah,
the most gentle mean. Yeah. So I guess to get less gentle, Bryce, I'll tell you why I don't see the Bolmero ability with him. Although I get what you're saying, but I don't think he's the type of ball handler that Bolmero was in a way that you can really be a secondary creator, because he has like the one quick dribble. I actually think I like the shot more than you guys. Like I thought the catch and shoot stuff was really good. He has kind of a trebuchet shot, but the touch is there. Like the touch is really good from deep. And he has that one dribble cross where I think he can, in the mid-range, be somewhat of a factor, but it's just one move. And I just don't think he's as flexible a player as someone like a Bolmero, or as much of a not as flexible and just not as coordinated, to be honest. Like he dribbles. A lot of his turnovers are from trying really cool things as a passer, which is great. And a lot of it is from dribbling the ball off his foot. Like he's, I wouldn't say a horrendous ball handler, but there's a lot of times where if you're in a role that you're going to be having the ball in his hand, it's quite a bit, whether it is as a primary or secondary guy. I think you just got to be a much better ball handler than he currently is. And the fact he does everything to his left, he only finishes with his left hand. And, I don't have certain access to a certain resource that would be helpful to be able to track, the percentage of left-handed shots he had at the rim. But I would venture to say it's probably in the 90s. It's quite high. And I think that to be someone in either in a primary or a secondary type role, you have to just be more flexible as a player physically, but also just in at the way you go about playing the game, right? You can't do everything with your left hand. You can't only wait for things to happen as a processor. You have to do some things more reactive. And I think that Saraf just doesn't have that. And I'll quickly go over the defense because I don't think there's a lot there. He just gets really bullied as a point of attack defender, even by those small, unathletic German guards I was talking about earlier. Like those guys are bullying Saraf. He should be frame wise, physically looks like he should be much stronger than he functionally is. But I thought that he's just not able to take a lot of contact to the chest or stand his ground at the perimeter. And obviously, just with the size and the frame he has, he's not someone that's going to be really in any other sort of position out except being out on the perimeter. And he's struggling quite a bit with that. So it's just I like the shooting. I think I like it more than you guys, and I think that's really interesting. But he has no explosion around the rim as a finisher. Does everything with his left. He's a good passer, not great, but you can't do it with, um, you know, from a point where he's close to the rim because he needs a screen or something. He doesn't have explosion. I view him more as I have him in that sort of tier with Demeen and Trey Johnson, who I know a lot of people are going to disagree with, but as guys that to me are maybe you take them at the end of the draft, which obviously they're not going to go there, or they would be like primary two-way contract guys for me, guys I would immediately pick up the phone to call as a two-way guy just to take a swing on, because I do think the shooting is useful and the passing could be used in a specific connector way, but I'm not looking to prioritize them as draftable guys.
So the one thing I do want to discuss a little bit before we get into value is I actually did like the defense a good amount, and I do think that's maybe, again, one thing that I'll point to. I think the path for him is two guard, be a solid NBA two guard, and that's I think the defense is a big part of that. He doesn't have the quickest feet, and he's not very long, so like he's never going to be like a lockdown guy. But I think he has a really strong core and chest, like really strong, and he's really good at keeping guys boxed in and funneling them where he wants them to go. And he also just is like I thought really good in passing lanes without like being a horrendous gambler that's just getting himself out of plays all the time. I thought there were multiple times he did a really good job making plays on the ball in the air, and that's where that 2.7 steal rate comes from. Now again, some of that is Ulm, like everyone on Ulm was trying to jump passing lanes except for Justinian Jessup, basically. So, I understand that that's not all, Saraf on his own, but I thought you even see that in the Israel FIBA tape. Like, he is just not a guy you want to attack. Stupid. But he's not a guy you want to attack. He's good in passing lanes. I think he's a generally good rotation defender. Now he's a guy who, Coop mentioned this a couple pods ago, and it was a great point about, I think this was when we were talking about Phylon. The tough thing is to be a two guard, especially if you can't make low man rotations and be effective, that's going to be really hard. And he would really struggle to get vertical at the rim. He's going to have to meet guys way out, and that's going to necessitate other people, really crashing that backside hard and executing X outs. But for what it's worth, I did think he was good at those rotations. He's good at getting on the outside of the rim and putting his chest where it needs to be, and having to execute scram switches as needed. Like, I thought he was a big reason that Ulm's kind of fly around, kind of crazy defense worked as well as it did. I mean, he like Ulm is a good team. It's not in a great league, but when they lost, they tended to be fairly competitive. They beat other good teams. I just think like that is important to note to me, is that he was the starting point guard, even though again he didn't play a crazy amount of minutes. He was the starting point guard on a really good really, solid German team that is, now playing in the playoffs. I think that does matter. And I think specifically defensively, he was a big part of their success, which is not something you always say about guards. But I do think that does kind of raise him to me. I was thinking about having him in that tier down with Jeremiah Fears, like at the bottom of my board. But I think I'm going to have him in that tier ahead with Jaeger Demon, where it's just like, hey, I don't love either of those guys, and I think they have gigantic deficiencies. But I do think I would, give him a two-way comfortably and say, let's see, can this guy be a big time ad? Because if Saraf hits, like, this is a probably pretty valuable rotation piece. As maybe a third guard or a backup two guard. I think the path to starting is really low because even though, like I'm saying, I like the defense. I don't love the defense. He's not going to be a great defensive player in the NBA, but I think he can be a competent one who contributes to good defense. Especially, if he was on a team that had like let's say like in the second round, if I'm the Spurs, I might even consider drafting Saraf and giving him a full contract. Saraf, excuse me, and giving him a full contract because I think that he is like a really potentially perfect fit as a secondary creator if he's making shots, who is also gets to play on a team where they have that kind of rim protection behind him, and he gets to potentially be a really interesting nail guy who gets to take chances and get out and just play off his instincts and his intelligence defensively. That's really fun for me. Now, again, he's not quite the level of shooter I'd want him to be for that to be the whole sell, but that would be that's where I am with him. He's a borderline contract guy in the second round. Depending on the fit, I might give him a contract. I might give him a two-way. I might stash him. What will probably happen is I'm guessing he will get stashed. But we'll see. I think before the season it was a certainty that he wouldn't. I think with where the buzz is right now, I think he's going to fall to the second round and probably get stashed. But we'll see. Coop, where are you at with Saraf?
I definitely like him more than Fears. I like him more than Fears. I like him more than McNeely. I like him more than Demon. But man, I find it. I think the best case scenario is you stash him and then you just wait and see if the name picks up any value, and maybe some stuff comes along when he gets to go play on a team where he continues to get usage and continues to be a high level option. Overseas, these kinds of players can have real value. It's why they're European point guards. It's why Saraf started for them. I do think that that's kind of an intangible thing. Like being that starting point guard for a pretty good team is a pretty big deal. And it's not, maybe that is like the best sell and the best thing that's just like, I'm kind of an idiot, but I'm pretty comfortable not being the team that takes this swing on him. Doesn't matter where it is. I would be very, very comfortable letting somebody else take him, and I would be fine missing on him. Because I think even if I miss, that's not the kind of player that I super value. Feels a lot like just a usage eater who can do some pretty basic stuff and not add a ton of value in any real spot on the court. I have him below Ace Bailey and above Jeremiah Fears in my second round tier, because maybe, being able to stash him gives him value. In the second round, if you can stash a guy and not have that, then maybe that's more valuable than some of the guys who will be there, but not the kind of guy I really love. So, Stone, where you at?
I kind of already, I guess, jumped ahead and spoiled it a bit, but
I forgot about that. You're
basically in the same boat as
up.
Bryce. Basically in the same boat as Bryce. Priority two-way guy that maybe I would draft at the end, probably in a class like this.
Thank you so much for listening to the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast here on YouTube. If you want to check out more of our stuff, you can follow us on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. You can check out our website, upsideswings.com. You can follow all of us on Twitter, subscribe here on YouTube for more content coming down the line. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts on this pod and our process in the comments. We'll see you next time. Thank you.